Welcome back. It's time for the round 6 wrap-up of the Brew Bowl. Let's go over and have a look at the fixtures and see how the teams are doing. So looking at our leaderboard, the Lauren Forest Drakes moved back into first place after the Iron Hammers got a draw against the Slum City Blight. So that left the Hammers moving down to seconds. Blight stayed in at third. There were some big improvements this round from the Knights, the Executioners, and the Outcasts all moved up. And then conversely, similar sort of drops from the Enslavers, the Gladiators, and the Butchers. From 10 down, pretty much just some movements up and down here and there, but some of the teams I think now are going to really struggle to make it into the playoffs. I think if any of the bottom sort of 3 or 4 teams lose the next round, they will have no chance of getting into the playoffs. But we'll see how they do. Maybe they will surprise us, and some really powerful teams will also lose out. Let's look at the teams themselves though for this round. So the Ascalon Gladiators had a tough loss against the Knights, especially because they had their Giant and the Knights didn't. They still went down 3-0, and it was also a punishing game for their players. So one of their players, Snepathy, was killed. Blythenera, one of their blockers, was seriously injured and will miss next game. And on top of that, their blitzer, Physera, who's really their major star player, managed to offend the sponsors and will miss the next game doing penance for whatever it is that she said or did. So they did bring in a new lineman who picked up pro for a single game as well with a good management role. But it's really going to be a struggle, I think, for Foehammer and the Gladiators in round 7, depending on their opponents, and we'll talk about that towards the end. Yeah, I think it's really, they're in the middle of the pack, so they need a win to really stay in with a chance of the playoffs this year as well, this season. Okay, looking at the Axolotl Coatls, Pondo the Mads team. Once again, a tough match, a draw against the Marauders, but on top of that, you had one of their blockers drafted, one of their blockers missing the next game, and then Pondo made the decision to actually fire one of his blockers that has short hands, a skill he never uses, and he's used his money to go and bring in 2 new blockers, basically with the same names, obviously because Mo Jadden likes to refer to them as where they go rather than what they're actually called. But yeah, so that's a tough match for the Coatls, but they still remain with a decent team value, although with one of their major players down for the next match. Fungus Bay Fanatics, who drew with the Guardians, once again, random skill on a random player, and it got stacked onto Snoz the Loon, their Looney, who now has 2 skills, Block and Frenzy, both of which aren't really great for a Looney, so I expect to see him get drafted away at some point in the future and probably replaced with a fresh normal Looney. They also picked up an Apothecary, although deaths haven't really been a big problem for the Fanatics. But, we'll see how they go. Maybe that Apothecary will either help them get into some tougher matches or help them out when things turn bad with one of their trolls or one of their major positional players. Clump Guardians, as I mentioned, drew with the Fanatics. They lost 2 players to the draft this round, Ortman Tom and their lineman, and Rudolph Rose and their other lineman, both with skills, have left the team. They managed to replace one of those with a new lineman, and also picked up Dauntless on one of their other linemen. But yeah, not a great round for the Guardians, and probably a tough future for them as well in the competition. Hagen's Executioners picked up a good win, 2-0 against the Jarls. With that being said, their brand new Witch Elf took a serious injury and will miss the next game. Shlomo Deadstrike, who was really a bit of a star player in the game after getting the Predator result to give him performance-enhancing drugs that gave him higher strength and survived the entire match without passing out from that. Also picked up the Strip Boar skill. And thanks to a bit of extra money, we also ended up putting an Apothecary onto the Executioners too. Iceborne Peak Jarls conversely lost to the Executioners. They will get both their Valkyries back the next game. They were both missing the current game. And they also picked up Shadowing on a lineman. Probably not a great skill, but there it is. Still a very strong team, still with good chances in the remainder of the competition to do well. The Hammerers took a tough draw with the Blight, which cost them their lead in the competition. Also, Michael Stranson, one of the linemen, was drafted away. They did pick up Sneaky Git on Reginald Whiteson and brought in a new lineman who I think, Spoon made name, I haven't seen the name yet, but I'm sure it will be something NFL or NHL related. And that player also picked up pro for a single game as well. The Outcasts, who beat the Butchers 1-0, still a very brutal game. Lost their Minotaur. That's really costly to death. Although had the funds left over to bring in a new Minotaur, albeit at 150k, which is a big cost. Also picked up dodge on their thrower as well. The Knights, after their great win against the Gladiators, and then subsequently went on to also beat their Nemesis team, picked up Pro onto Sonja Vonhoff, their star player vampire, who is still protected by the protege rule we're using from the playbooks, which means that she won't be drafted away. Also decided to pick up an apothecary for their team. Lauren Forest Drakes, who beat the Enslavers, their thrower is out for a game, and they picked up Sneaky Git on a lineman, so not that great, but they've also moved into equal first place for overall dedicated fans with the Hammerers as well, with 6 dedicated fans. The Marauders, who had their draw with the Coatls, had a great game, I think. Played really well, especially in the second half. Picked up a blocker. Had the funds to pick up the blocker to replace the one that they lost last game. Also got Big Hand as a mutation on one of their linemen as well. The Butchers, who lost to the Outcasts, lost their foul appearance Marauder to the draft. Otherwise picked up Monstrous Mouth and other Marauder. And then bought in, they had extra funds, so bought in an extra Marauder for good measure. So they are well stocked out with players and still quite a threatening team to whoever plays them next. The Slow Thicket Pantry Raiders had a horrible game. One player killed, one player seriously hurt, one of their treemen drafted away without the funds to replace him. So they're going to be playing with one treeman down in the next match, which is a must-win match for them. I really think that their season is all but over, but we'll see. Halfling teams, they always remain positive, always have a chance to do some sort of upset. So we'll see how it turns out for the Pantry Raiders, but I think they might be not very long for the Brew Bowl this season. Slum City Blight, who drew against the Hammerers, not major changes here. Picked up jump up on one of their linemen, still in a very good position, still almost guaranteed a place in the finals. So doing very well for Dynamis, who was fresh to the competition this round and is really punching along with all of the returning players. Talabaxton Griffins, who beat the Raiders, lost one of their linemen to the draft, Isaban Breckers. Also picked up Shadowing on Rudolph Loeb, and finally replaced their Ogre, who had left the game, or left the team in a previous game, had the funds to go and replace him. So Ergo has been replaced by Rug Flamebane. And then finally the Warpstone Enslavers, who took their loss to the Drakes. Once again, AP just has so much money to throw into this team to get them to a really high team value so he can go and take his Nemesis. The Gravemaker picked up Guard, putting up to a 200k value. And he also brought in 2 new linemen. So he has a deep bench, an apothecary, plus a potential second apothecary thanks to his playbook. Thanks players who also positionals who regenerate. So, a really robust team, which is quite unusual for Skaven. Let's look at the individual player leaderboard. So, not many changes here. Best passes, it's really stayed at the top with the Drakes and then the Griffins and the Guardians. Triple H has now cemented his place on this leaderboard, as has the Ripley. Best scorers, Mitty still scored this round, giving her still a lead overall. Although Moss Burner has now overtaken Thorman Thomason, and Dawn Michaels has overtaken Thora Vardolir. So we're slowly seeing those retired players from previous games and previous seasons being pushed off the bottom of the leaderboard. The Gravemaker still remains our only player to appear on the interception board, albeit only for a deflection. Rain Lewison continues to top the most deadly board. I'm still surprised that the Wood Elf War Dancer has been stuck there in second place, although the Gravemaker has now equaled his score, and I'm pretty sure as the next match will go past it. For the most MVPs, Physera certainly has moved up to the top there, a very clear lead. And also Sonja Vonhoff is now in equal second place with 3 MVPs. And then, with the death of Aaron Steady Speaker, the Gravemaker has solidified his position at the very top of the most expensive players at 200k. So let's look at the matches for the next round. The Drakes are taking on the Knights. Looking at their ratings in tour play, it's given the Drakes a score of 8.7, the Knights a score of 8.4. I think probably if anyone can beat the Drakes, it's probably Mike, given that he is more used to playing me as a player because we're friends in real life, and also when he was working out his vampire team, we did a couple of test matches of Wood Elves versus Vampires, so he's probably got that inside line if he's going to come down to beating the Drakes. But you never know, the Drakes can pull out some pretty fantastic stuff when the times require it, although they are without a thrower for this match. Next, we've got the Outcast versus the Hammers. So this will be a player versus player match of Lawson versus Big Spoon. Tour play rates the Outcasts at a 9.7, Hammers at 11.9. So definitely favouring the Dwarves there. But I just find that both these players are really good at just finding plays out of nothing. So I think that'll be a really interesting match to watch, and I'm really looking forward to that one. We've then got the Haganeth Executioners taking on the Slum City Blight. Tour plays rated Executioners 8.2, Blight at 9.4. This one I think is an easy win for the Blight. I think that they will go all over the Executioners. But we'll see. You never know. The Dark Elves might pull something out, although they are down a Witch-Elf for this game. Then we've got the Butchers versus the Enslavers. The Butchers with a rating of 11, Enslavers a rating of 8.9. And look, the Butchers are hugely inflated by their foul statistics, which the Enslavers have 0 in. So I think that probably this is the match that Arthur might be dreading because the Butchers are such a killy team. But I do think that even if I do some damage to the Enslavers, I think they will still dominate the scoreboard. So I think that 11 versus 8.9 tour play score is not realistic to the outcome. But we'll see. We'll see how they do. All right, in the second part of round 7, we've got the Jarls taking on the Gladiators. The Jarls at 9.3, the Gladiators 8.2. Despite that score, I really favour the Gladiators here. I think that Foham has really done a lot of great things with this team. They are missing 2 positionals, a blocker and a blitzer, which is pretty big, especially because Foham has really managed to work out how to really use that blitzer with hit and run and high speed and dodge and block. So missing that player for that one game is pretty devastating, but I still think Foham has got the skills to really make that team do well, especially with those Strength 4 players, although they are up against the Strength 4 Ulfwenar as well. We've then got the Talabaclan Griffins versus the Axolotl Coatls, so Pondo playing in there. The tour play score for these are 9 for the Griffins, 6.8 for the Coatls. That's a huge differential, which I think is not very accurate. I think that Pondo gets hurt by bad luck, and I think that provided his luck is, only average, he should do very well in this match because he's very good with using those skinks and those blockers to really control the battle. Although I think he will be still... No, he fired the blocker, I think, that's missing the game, so I think he should still have 3 blockers and his Croxagore for the game, but we'll see. And then we've got the Marauders versus the Guardians. Marauders 8.1, Guardians at 7.7. I think that the Guardians have had some horrible losses. I think that Omar is just going from strength to strength with this team. So I do favour the Marauders in this match, as this tour plays ranking. Will it be enough to get him into the finals? Is it too little too late? Not sure yet, but time will tell. And then finally, we've got the Fanatics versus the Raiders. Fanatics 8.4. Rated at 7.8. I think being down at Treeman, I think with the Fanatics having, their 2 trolls and their 2 positionals, the Bomber and the Looney, I think that really I got to give this one to the Goblins. The Halflings did well in the last season, but I think this season has not been their set. Once again, losing a Treeman, not being able to replace it. I think that this will be the nail in the coffin for the Halflings. I think they'll lose this match, and that'll be them done for this year. They'll still obviously play in round 8, but I don't think they will have any chance of making it to the finals. So that is the summary of round 6. Round 7 starts this week. It might take another couple of weeks to get through. I apologise that there's not much been much Brew Bowl action over the past week or so. I've been taking a bit of a break just because, I've officiated 48 games so far in this season, and it just I needed to focus on other things a little bit, focus on some work, focus on some personal stuff. And of course, this is the same week that 10th edition Warhammer 40k came out, so I had a bit of stuff going on around that too. But we're back into the Brew Bowl this week, more games coming. Stay tuned to the YouTube channel. Come and chat to us at the AP Game Reel Discord channel. And we will see you in round 7. Take care.